Okay, moving on, let's dive in a little bit deeper. Why do you think cultural heritage is important in games specifically? I mean, looking at games where it used to be pure mechanic like Tetris and whatnot, and moving on to games what it is now with Assassin's Creed, which Alitt worked on, and a lot more other games. How do you see cultural heritage playing an important role in games from now and future on? Right?
Maybe I'll answer that. So, yeah, as Buzz mentioned, working on titles such as Assassin's Creed, it was a challenge because the game itself is about history and how they spin the history infused with the game direction that they want to push for. But for me, working on those kind of projects, it's hard because I haven't lived it. You know, when they did it in Rome, the whole, the other one with the American Revolution and all this stuff, the golden age of piracy. I'm from Malaysia, you know, I've never been to Rome, I've never been to Istanbul. Well, I have now, but when I worked in that project, I haven't. And for sure, I've never been to Caribbeans, but I'm hoping I would. But I think what I wanted to say was, when they actually do those stuff, the people who define the direction, the vision, how it's going to look like, they actually went there, immersed themselves, hired historians to fully understand the project that they need to do. Having said that, if we are going to push something from within, from Malaysia, it should not be hard because it's something that we are used to, right? If someone said they want to make a game about, you know, delivering or cooking nasi lemak and sending over, knocking door to sell it and whatnot, if you are a Malaysian creating that game, you get it right probably the first time compared to if we give the project to a Swedish guy, right? So that's the part of, you know, being working on a project that is not in my history kind of thing. But right now, working on a project like Need for Speed, there's no heritage there. There is a culture, but I think the word was car culture. So even though it is not super tied with history, but car itself is a history. So in any game, I believe in any game that is produced, there is always something there that brings credibility to the product. You know, car culture and the heritage of the ideas of getting, you know, making better cars and all this, it goes way back, you know. And probably for this time around, that is going to be the culture of what I'm trying to infuse myself with. You know. It's just unfortunate I cannot bring Proton into the game. Maybe in the next one I'll try my best. You know, it's super cool when I saw Hazme pushing a lot on Malaysian heritage. So I'll have to talk with, I don't know, Tun Mahathir or someone to make a deal to bring Proton and him in the game. But we'll see.
Just to follow up what he said, there is a Malaysian who made a blog post tracking all depictions of Malaysia inside a video game. So one of the things he documented is that in a game called SOCOM 4, there is a Proton car.
It's a police car, right?
It's a taxi. So I forgot the name of the blog, but just look for Malaysia in video games. Cool. It will be one of the results you find in your Google search. But touching on the need for heritage, see, the thing about video games is that you're making everything up. It's a fully creative product where there is no reason to put anything realistic in there. So you can just make stuff up and the game will still work. And that used to be what made the game industry great. The fact that anyone with a creative concept can just make it work, and if people find it fun, that's all that matters. But what's really interesting about culture linked to heritage is that you can't make culture up. You can create something like a mishmash of clothes and food and weaponry and dancers and traditions and call it a culture in a video game. But the reason culture is so strong is because it means something. It may not be apparent to the people practicing the culture, but the reason a cultural practice stayed on for hundreds of years is because it has a resonance to the people in that culture. and the resonance is somehow visible when you depict it. So if instead of creating something out of nothing, you take a reference out of an existing culture, it has more meaning and it has more impact in a virtual environment. That is why in game development now, take Rockstar for example, they build urban cities. But instead of just making an urban city, they deliberately sent 50, 60 people on site to study the city for a good few months. They spend a huge amount of money doing that, but the main reason they do that is because they want to get the essence of the location. So they want to learn from what's already there instead of making it up. And that's when bringing in culture into a video game is important, because it creates a very strong link between the player playing the game and the world the game is in. And that link is much stronger than anything you try to make up from nothing.
Yeah, I like the point that Hilmi makes just now. It is important because now that we try to imitate as closest as we can about the real thing and put it in video game nowadays, right? And it's no longer just making it up. You try to put as much resemblance as possible to the real thing. You know, my daily job for now is looking at making good business out of video games, and one of the way is to have good retention of the player keep on playing the games, right? Which translate into some people actually spend 10, 12 hours or even whole days staring at that screen, big or small, looking at that same game day after day, right? You know, and you've been looking at the same thing for a very long time. You can't help but to analyze almost every element, every object in the game, right? You know, take for example myself, you know, when I first started playing Battlefield back then, I didn't know much about weapons, right? When you start shooting off with that weapon 4 or 5 hours a day, you're triggered to learn about the actual thing in real life, you know, what is the spec of the weapon and everything, you know. Now, take a look at Assassin's Creed, right? You know, it's based on actual places, you know, well with timeline in the history that makes sense and give impact to the world. While you're playing it, even though you're not interested about it at the beginning, you know, off time from your screen, you tend to think about what actually happened that we recorded in history. It makes you want to learn about it, you know, and you tend to get more information out of it without even having the initial thought of you wanted to know about it, you see. So by that point alone, I think it is important to have the cultural heritage embedded in games nowadays, because it is can be proven to be commercially success, of course. Second thing is it could be a very good secondary tools of source for you to learn something that you never thought that you have interest in, you know. For someone who playing racing car games, you know, playing F1, all the other Gran Turismo game and everything, chances are they're not really a big fan of the mechanical part, engineering part of the car, right? But as they keep on playing it, they would tend to learn how, because they want to play and win the game and good at it. So I guess it is important to have this kind of element embedded in a game, if it's not because it could generate a good success in terms of business. It is also a good way to spread whatever information that is valuable to us in terms of our culture and heritage. Yeah.
I would like to add my own personal point of view on that. I think one of the things that Hilmi mentioned and what Junaidi mentioned as well is that game used to be pretty much entertainment product, right? I mean, when we're talking about games back in the old days, it's made for people to have fun. In fact, the first game was made in a war laboratory, right? The first space war, the game is actually made by scientists who are designing the war machine for the World War I or II, I forgot which one, World War II, yeah. And they're so stressful, they're like, let's make games so that we scientists can have a bit of fun and program this space war game. And I think it started from that pure entertainment purpose, but as game grows, and today what we have games is actually is a culture by itself that is spreading really fast among the youngsters, because games have one unique thing compared to other mediums like film, animation, music. Game have interactivity, right? So like if you're looking at animation, it's a one-way communication per se. It's the director, the story writer is actually giving or telling their stories to you, and you enjoy it. Music's roughly the same. You listen the music, the performance, and then you absorb it and you enjoy it. On the other hand, games sort of give that power for you to do certain things in the game, of course within the limited scope, to do what you believe should be done, right? I think that power of interactivity give a huge level of engagement from the user to the content itself. Because if you play, let's say, for an RPG game and you play like in Assassin's Creed, you play as Ezio, right? You're living a character who's going through journey and doing actions that sort of determine history. And that heroic journey is what we aspire, even from films. That's how we love movies like Hobbit, Lord of the Ring. It's always about the hero's journey. We felt compelled to be associated with the hero's struggles and challenges and his determination to overcome the challenges as it is. And I think because in games it allows you to play as the character, it has that very, very strong engagement, and that means it affects people deeper in some sense, and which is why I think from that aspect games should infuse culture or cultural heritage, because that's where this thing can be embedded deeper. For example, one of the thing that touching what Junaidi is mentioning is that there are games like in China, the most popular games or game IP would be Romance of Three Kingdoms. It's basically the #1 story in China. And in fact, if you're talking about culture itself, Sun Wukong, which is basically the monkey god, sort of like infused into what Japanese created, Akira Toriyama created, Dragon Ball. And of course, Akira Toriyama don't just take Sun Wukong and do Sun Wukong the way it is. He took Sun Wukong and create his own version, his own interpretation. And I think that's where games started to add more value. And we, the one that play Dragon Ball, go like, hey, this is cool story about this guy who's supposed to be from a different planet. You can feel a lot of infusion and a lot of amalgamation of culture in that alone. But of course, it has some substance from an inspiration from somewhere. And that's where I think moving on, a lot of people's life will be affected by games. And it is important us as a game developer or content creator to do it right? To do something that will be beneficial for the greater good of humanity per se. Be it the struggles of war nation, or be it the struggles of poor nation, be it the science breakthrough in countries like Germany, Japan, and whatnot. Be it the culture of Silicon Valley. I mean, there's a lot of things happening in the world now, and if we can incorporate that into games, that's where I think we learn a lot more as human. Just to quote one more thing, there's one game called Pepper, Please. That game has been quoted as a huge, it opens the spectrum of what games can be. It's a game where you, as the player, plays as the immigration officer. You guys have traveled a lot, right? The one you don't want to mess around is the immigration officer, right? Because they can stamp you to allow you to enter the country. And we always on the receiving end, we always worry, oh, will he stamp, will he question me? We always been on the one that needs the stamp. But when you play in Pepper Please, you are the one that's going to stamp the passport. And you see easily 300 people a day passing by your counter, and you're like, which one might be criminal? Which one might be good people? And you have all these questions running through your mind as you look through their profile and like, is this what he say he is? He looks older than the photo, or is he? So all this kind of thing, is the game allows you to play that, and to me, it broadens our view of what the world is. Probably now we'll be a lot more compassionate towards the stressful immigration officer who've been waiting there since morning until lunch, or even lunch to midnight, to actually just stamp for you. And that's where I think games is powerful in that sense.